think it's about time the gay brothers and sisters got their rights, and especially the women.
Marsha was very good-natured. She was funny. She laughed. But that shouldn't be mistaken for a lack of serious purpose and political intent.
Her mission in life is going about spreading peace and goodwill, giving license to, you don't have to be dressed up in a suit. You can express yourself. She became, to me, like a bodhisattva, a holy person who would wander the village in whatever adornment she wanted, being at peace.
How will this affect your job?
Darling, I don't have a job. I'm on welfare. I have no intention of getting a job as long as this country discriminates against homosexuals.
Welcome to the Carefree Black Nerd Podcast, a conversation about representation in comics and related media. I am your host, Rain Coleman, and this is issue number 78. Welcome back all. This is Pride Month. So thank you all and happy Pride Month. Now, we're in the midst of a pandemic. COVID is going on. We also have, if you haven't noticed, we've had a lot of protesting and a lot of shaking up of the status quo for the last few, I don't know, not even really days, weeks. With all of the tension that's going on socially and outside of everyone's fucking bedroom window and front door, I wanted to take a different turn with this episode, not focusing on a character but on an actual person. This issue we will be discussing Marsha P. Johnson. Some people may be aware, some people may not. There may be varying degrees of understanding about Marsha P. Johnson. So this is going to be my kind of kickoff for Pride Month and for going forward. Because though I am focused on comics and related media, I do think that it is important to highlight this LGBTQAI community as often as possible. This black portion of the community specifically. Now, Johnson was one of the first drag queens to go to the Stonewall Inn after they began allowing women and drag queens inside. It was previously a bar for only gay men. On the early morning hours of June 28th of 1969, the Stonewall Uprising occurred. While the first 2 nights of rioting were most intense, the clashes with the police would result in a series of spontaneous demonstrations and marches throughout the gay neighborhoods of Greenwich Village, for roughly a week afterwards. Now, if you can't find similarities to what the hell is going on in today through that, then I don't know what to tell you. This episode could have come out on the 28th, that is a Sunday, but like I said, I wanted to kick off Pride Month with this story. It's a very important one. It's very important to highlight the fact that Marsha P. Johnson is a black person. Now, I was not made aware of Marsha growing up. It wasn't until like later on in my 20s that I was even, that name meant something to me. I remember being on a trip to New York with a few friends of mine and going past the Stonewall Inn, and one of my homegirls, cis heterosexual girl, she was like, she said something and she said Stonewall. I can't remember verbatim what it was that she said, but I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a nice looking place. And I kept on moving. And she was like, do you not understand what that, what that establishment is, what the importance is? I was like, no. And getting older, doing the research, being taught by other people online, people, friends and family, people who knew, it's just another failure on the part of the larger system that I was not made aware of Marsha P. Johnson growing up. Much like the history books are written by the victors of the wars or of the battles, you won't get a history book that says, oh, and we came in and raped and pillaged and took over all this fucking land. It's like, no, we discovered this land and now it's ours. So I say all that to say that I'm still learning I'm not even embarrassed at my ignorance because now I'm an adult and I can research and look for these things and this understanding on my own. But a lot of this stuff I feel like should have been taught, should have been part of a curriculum, should have been in something that everybody knew about. I don't think that with this being a quote unquote gay uprising or a gay issue that it should stop. It should begin and end there. Whenever anyone bucks the system, regardless to the identity of those persons, I think it's good for everyone to know. It's just so we'll get right in. So actually, before that, use that hashtag CBNPod when you're listening to this podcast. CBNLGBTQ is the other hashtag that's specifically for just promoting queer, LGBTQAI persons and gender non-conforming. Any projects you may have, you want to get your stories out or whatever, please use that hashtag. Again, it is CBNLGBTQ. So, Marsha P. Johnson. Now, Johnson was born Malcolm Michaels Jr. This was back in August 24th of 1945 in Elizabeth, New Jersey, with 6 siblings and a father, Malcolm Michaels Sr., who was an assembly line worker in General Motors. Johnson's mother, Alberta Claiborne, was a housekeeper. Marsha attended an African Methodist Episcopal church as a child and remained devoutly religious later in life, often taking an interest in Catholicism, but also making offerings to the saints in a more personal matter. It was noted that she kept a private altar at her home. Now, Johnson first began wearing dresses at the age of 5, but stopped temporarily due to harassment by boys who lived in the neighborhood. Again, okay. So after this, Johnson described the idea of being gay as sort of a dream. Now, this was in an interview back in 1992, and the dissonance that you have, okay, I couldn't imagine. Okay, take a couple steps back. People oftentimes view certain parts of history with these like rose-colored glasses and this like fond nostalgia. You get people who are like hell-bent on, man, the 80s was the best time period. No, it was the 70s. No, it was the 20s. And to think of all these stories that come out, history books passed on by word of mouth, by different communities, and the stories that make it to the textbooks and that make it to the forefront of these of children of the K through 12, and to see that so many marginalized people are removed from the narrative or diminished their role in it or altered, which is why, again, I fight for representation in comics and related media. And that's from books, video games, activism, any and everything. That's all encompassing. But reading that statement that the idea of being gay was some sort of a dream, like you couldn't even fathom that was something that was attainable or something that you could be outwardly excited. Like you just, oh man, this is kind of personal for me. So I'm going to try to get through this as cleanly as possible, but I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Now, rather than something that seemed possible. So again, Johnson described the idea of being gay as some sort of a dream rather than something that seemed possible. And so chose to remain asexual. Now, leaving for New York at the age of 17, Johnson's mother reportedly said that being homosexual is like being lower than a dog. So again, like, golly, the emotional and psychological fucking trauma and warfare and that you have to endure from every angle, neighborhood motherfuckers, people in your goddamn house, friends, family, motherfuckers who think they mean well. It's just, and religious figures. And then for Marsha to be so devoutly religious and to also be getting it on that front, it's just like, man, the shit that we overcome or that we work through, still making great names for ourselves or, living on, but just having that, I don't know. So Johnson said that Alberta was unaware of the LGBT community. Now, after graduating from the former Edison High School In Elizabeth back in 1963, Johnson left home for New York with $15 and a bag of clothes. Now, I don't know what $15 back in 63 equates to for $15. I don't know what it equates to in money in 2020. If anyone knows, let me know. Tweet me, Carefree Blur, CBN Pod, CBN LGBTQ. I'd love to find out. I'll do some digging. But if you know and you're listening to this, tweet me or leave a comment. Now, a bag of clothes and $15 in your pocket. Johnson waited on tables after moving to the Greenwich Village in 1966. Now, after meeting gay people in the city, Johnson finally felt it was possible to be gay and was able to come out. So 17 years may not seem like a long time to you, but imagine you listening who are cishet or, speaking to y'all directly, can you imagine having crushes and going on dates and holding hands and having your first kiss and having your parents and older cousins and family members like, oh, hey, Tamika, you got a boyfriend at school? Or, hey, Tyrone, you didn't like anybody, to have that freedom and that normalcy, and then imagine having that taken away. Yes, 17 years may not seem like a long time, but God damn, 17 years is a long time to be in hiding or to have to learn the brutal truth that you cannot be yourself. To have to learn not just by someone maybe telling you ahead of time like, oh, life's going to be hard, but to learn in real time from being harassed, being attacked, being beat up, being beat down by the religious and the authority figures, and then by your very own family members. For your mother to say being gay is lower than a dog, God damn. So to get to this point and being able to come out, that's one of the, not stereotypes, what is it? For lack of a better term, stereotypes of New York. And lots of times you see people in movies and TV shows going to the Big Apple so they can be them true selves. Okay, just like even going to LA, I want to be an actor, I want to be a record producer. You go off to LA. Now, I don't know if those examples or tropes or stereotypes, for lack of a better term, holds true today in this digital age, but that was the running theme. Any show from the 60s on up, you can imagine when it's dealing with New York, though you still have the crime and the villain of the week and the political stuff, but when you look at TV shows that center New York, my experience has been it's that move to the Big Apple, be who you want to be, recreate yourself, be artsy, be open, be progressive, and to have that freedom. Now, Johnson initially used the moniker Black Marsha, but later decided on the drag queen name Marsha P. Johnson. So Johnson got the name Johnson from the restaurant Howard Johnson on 42nd Street, stating that the P in Marsha P. Johnson meant pay it no mind. So, and used that phrase sarcastically when questioned about gender, saying it stands for pay it no mind. Now, Johnson said that the phrase, Johnson once said that phrase to a judge who was very, who was humored by it. So that humor led to Johnson's release. Now, Marsha variably identified as a gay and a transvestite and a queen, referring to drag queen, of course. Now, according to Susan Stryker, a professor of human gender and sexuality studies at the University of Arizona, Johnson's gender expression could probably be more accurately called gender nonconforming. Johnson never self-identified with the term transgender, but that term was also not a widely used term back when Johnson was alive. So even that, like we have all these terms and we have a lot of progression in technology and vocabulary and awareness and visibility, but and this is why I do like older TV shows and movies and properties. However problematic, they are a kind of staple of that time. And to see Marsha, someone who of course I'd never met, never knew, but to see Marsha being Marsha in the 60s, take that exact same person, ideas, thoughts, and whatnot, and bring it to 2020, when now you have so many different words and phrases, memes to educate and to identify. That's something that's interesting to me. So, again, I'm still learning. I'm not even going to act like I know everything. That being said, if anything that I say during this issue is incorrect, slightly off, any facts or dates that are off, please feel free to let me know. I'm not embarrassed to say I'm still learning. But getting back to what I was saying before, to look at someone who lives in their truth and they're back in the 60s and the 70s, but then to see that same type of person now and have ways to identify that person with words that weren't widely used or even created back then, to me that's such an amazing thing as well. A bit of a tangent, you see in Disney a lot of characters are coded as queer. The villains usually dramatic makeup, dark bold colors. Look at Jafar and look at Ursula, look at Scar, even like look at them versus the protagonists in these stories and see why people, gays especially, flock to these characters. I'm trying to bring it back in because I'm trying not to go off on a tangent, but this is real time. Will be no editing. This is me. this is me. So anywho, Johnson's style of drag was not serious. It wasn't high drag. It wasn't show drag. And this is noted as being due to Johnson being unable to purchase clothing from these expensive stores. Now, it's not lost on me the Pose of it all. Pose on FX. When going through Marsha's history, and I'm wondering if that'll be touched on a bit more this upcoming season. Who knows? But when I read through and look at a lot of Marsha's videos and information about her and her friends and the surrounding community, I put it in context of Pose just because that's, I think, the most closely or most adjacent project that we have for large consumption, so to speak. I mean, there is the Paris is Burning of it all, but Pose is like a household show at this point. So when I go through this portion of Johnson's kind of description and history, it reminds me of Blanca, who is on the show, doesn't pass as well as the other trans women, and is not wealthy like Elektra, and has to shop in a way that is very grab and go. If I'm stealing or if I'm paying for it, I got to get what's around. It does. If it don't fit, if it's too big, oh well, we'll worry about that later. And that's what this remind me of. So not a high drag or a show drag, but a do what you got and make it work. Now Johnson received leftovers flowers after sleeping under tables used for sorting flowers in the flower district of Manhattan, and was known for wearing crowns of fresh flowers. So that was like her thing. Johnson was tall, slender, and often dressed in flowing robes and shiny dresses, red plastic heels and bright wigs, which tended to draw a lot of attention, of course. Like, just imagine that. Even if you saw that today, tall, slender, dark-skinned black woman, trans or cis, with long flowing dresses, crown of roses on her head, big dramatic makeup. Like, imagine seeing that today. Even in 2020, that would bring attention to it. Now, as Edmund White writes in his 1979 Village Voice article entitled "The Politics of Drag," Johnson also liked dressing in ways that would display the interstices between masculine and feminine. A featured photo of Johnson in this article shows Johnson in a flowing wig and makeup and a translucent skirt, pant, and parka, highlighting the ways that, quoting Kate Millett's Sexual Politics, White says she is both masculine and feminine at once. Now, reading through that, this reminds me of none other than Grace Jones. Like, who, in description alone, tall, slender, dark skin, long flowing dresses, high cheekbones, just sounds the same. Or very similar, rather. Now, there is some existing footage of Johnson doing full, glamorous high drag on stage, but most of Johnson's performances work was with groups that were more kind of grassroots, guerrilla style, comedic, and political. Johnson sang and performed as a member of and I'm going to butcher this name, Camicis, Camicias If you know how to pronounce that, please let me know, because I'm definitely butcher that. Now, Johnson sang and performed as a member of J, that name, international New York City-based drag performance troupe, Hot Peaches. Bro, Hot Peaches, fam, what I wouldn't give to see a full-on concert from Hot Peaches. Now, this was from 1972 through the shows back in the 90s. Now, when the Cockettes, y'all, Hot Peaches and Cockettes. So when the Cockettes, a similar drag troupe from San Francisco, formed an East Coast troupe, the Angels of Light, Johnson was also asked to perform with them. So this, okay, let's take that back. Marsha performed in a drag troupe, an international New York City-based drag troupe called Hot Peaches from 72 through to the 90s. The Cockettes, a similar drag troupe from San Francisco, bro, they created the Angels of Light, and Johnson was also asked to perform with them. So you so damn good that they like, let's scoop up Marsha right now. But Hot Peaches, the Cockettes, and Angels of Light, man, that sounds like a series of like gay blaxploitation films with like some Foxy Brown spy shit with some Dolomite thrown in. Now, in 1973, Johnson performed the role of the Gypsy Queen in the Angels production, The Enchanted Miracle, about the comet Coquette, and you know what? Yes, about the comet K in 1975. Now, Johnson was photographed by famed artist, you may know him, this little name, Mr. Andy Warhol, as part of the Ladies and Gentlemen series of Polaroids. Back in 1990, Johnson performed with the Hot Peaches in London. Oh man, so this is a lot. Like, again, that whole move to New York, go to the Big Apple and live out your dreams. Like, you move there with $15 and a sack of clothes, bus tables, got connected with all these different. It's like such an exciting time. I liken it to going away to college in a whole nother state, getting involved in so many activities, getting, a bit more political and more kind of solidified in your viewpoints, and then branching off and just hitting the road for like road trips with your friends, going off to protest certain things, and going off and joining fraternities, sororities, and youth groups, and what, just like this exciting time post high school but pre full adulthood, and just living. Oh my God, like imagine that. 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and oh man. Okay. So now, as an AIDS activist, Johnson also appeared in the Hot Peaches production, The Heat. This was back in 1990, singing the song Love while wearing an ACT UP Silence Equals Death button. Now, the ACT UP was a AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, ACT UP. It was an international grassroots political group working to end the AIDS pandemic. The group worked to improve the lives of many people with AIDS and through direct action, medical research, treatment, and advocacy, and working to change legislation and public policies. Like, this is a lot of shit that, looking back on it, is so grand, it's so large. It's like you had this phenomenal resume, this body of work, both political and artistic. But imagine living in that moment, just experiencing all of these different things, and just how exciting that must have been. 17 years old, graduate, leave the house, $15, a sack of clothes, go to New York, and then your life just goes into overdrive. I'm sure there's highs and lows, just like with everybody. Marsha wasn't a wealthy person, but to be in that exciting space, man. All right, y'all. Now, like I mentioned, Johnson was one of the first drag queens to go to the Stonewall Inn. Now, Johnson has been named, along with Zazu Nova and Jackie Hormona, by a number of the Stonewall veterans interviewed by David Carter in his book, Stonewall, The Riots That Sparked the Gay Revolution. Now, they were noted as being the three individuals known to have been the vanguard, the freaking vanguard, of the pushback against the police at the uprising. Johnson denies starting the uprising Now, back in 1987, Johnson recalled arriving around 2 a.m. that morning that the riots had already started. By that time that the Stonewall building was on fire, the cops set it on fire. After the cops set it on fire, the cops set it on fire. The riots reportedly started around 1:30 that morning after, and I'm going to get this wrong, Stormy DeLavery, I believe that's it, fought back against the police who attempted to arrest her that night. So again, this is incited and amplified by who other than the cops? Shit. Now, Carter writes that Robin Souza had reported that fellow Stonewall veterans and gay activists such as Morty Manford and Marty Robinson had told Souza that on the first night, Johnson threw a shot glass at the mirror in the Torch Bar screaming, "I got my civil rights." Souza told the Gay Activist Alliance shortly afterwards that it was the shot glass that was heard around the world. What? The shot glass that was heard around the world? Now, Carter, however, concluded that Robinson had given several different accounts of that night, and none of the accounts were Johnson's name brought up. Possibly in fear that he could publicly, that if he publicly credited the uprising to Marsha, then Marsha's well-known mental state and gender non-conforming could have been used effectively by the movement's opponents. Which is, again, you go through your life, you're being beat down or shown firsthand that you are less than. Your own mama think you lesser than a dog. You get away, you get this exciting life, you get this freedom, and even in something so dramatic and so earth-shattering and this event still have to possibly be silenced or have your role diminished so that others can't use that against you. Like your very being can taint a movement or something. Like it's that intersection, that black and queer and living in America, and just oh my God, y'all. Yeah, so that could have been used against them. Man. Now, the alleged shot glass incident also has been heavily disputed. Now, prior to Carter's book, it was claimed that Johnson had thrown a brick at the police officer, an account that was never verified. Marsha also confirmed not being present at the Stonewall Inn when the riots broke out, but instead had heard about it and went to get Sylvia Rivera, who was at a park uptown sleeping on a bench, to tell her about it. Now, again, if you have more information, more solid information, anything that's different from what I'm reporting, please let me know. I am not afraid or embarrassed of being incorrect, of getting dates wrong, of getting of being corrected. That's not an issue for me, because at the end of the day, I just want the story out there. Now, again, Sylvia Rivera was sleeping on a park bench. Like, oh my God. However, many have corroborated that in the second night, Marsha climbed up a lamppost and dropped the bag with the brick in it down on a cop car, shattering the windshield, which is like, go ahead, girl, do it. Now, following the Stonewall uprising, Johnson joined the Gay Liberation Front and participated in the first Christopher Street Pride Rally. Christopher Street Pride Rally on the first anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion in June of 1970. One of Johnson's most notable direct actions occurred in August of 1970, staging a sit-in protest at Weinstein Hall at the New York University alongside fellow Gay Liberation Front members after administration canceled a dance when they found out it was sponsored by a gay organization. Like, again, the fighting just to be seen as equal, just to have the same rights, just to be viewed in the same way. Like, I know we're dealing with a lot now, and shit could always be worse, but God damn it, like, oh man.
I want to say it was the 4th of July. We were going to meet at midnight, but she never showed up.
She was in danger.
I was there when they pulled her out. Marsha was so full of life.
Marsha P. Johnson was the Rosa Parks of the LGBT movement.
Darling, I want my gay rights now.
Her case has been cold for 25 years. I'm calling from the Anti-Violence Project here in New York City. I want to try to give Marsha justice.
Marsha! Marsha!
Street people and the drag queens were the vanguard of the movement. Stonewall, Marsha and I fought the cops off.
We were in the streets turning over cars.
The movement started the next day.
Marsha was famous all around the world. But even famous people, cases go cold. This is her case.
It's hard for me to believe that she would commit suicide.
A lot of people think it was a murder.
Marsha had a fear about the mafia.
Something's wrong. We keep on running into a brick wall.
You a private investigator?
No.
Don't play detective yourself, all right? Leave this to the people that should handle it.
We want justice here! To find out who the hell murdered Marsha!
I have been beaten. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job for gay liberation. Revolution now!
I don't bite my tongue for nobody, but you can get you murdered, you know.
The police just brush it off.
I'll get to the bottom of it. There's a massive number of trans women who have been murdered. And they're yelling out from their graves for justice.
Now, shortly after that, Johnson and close friend Sylvia Rivera co-founded the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR organization. Now, with that being said, this may be a bit of a reach, but I wonder if STAR, the TV show... nope, I'm not going to go there. Now, initially was titled Street Transvestites Actual Revolutionaries. The two of them became a visible presence at gay liberation marches and other radical political actions. In 1973, Johnson and Rivera were banned from participating in the Gay Pride Parade by the Gay and Lesbian Committee, who were administering the event, saying that they weren't going to allow drag queens. Bitch, what? At their marches, claiming that they were giving them a bad name. And this goes back to, again, like, and I don't know, again, if this is so much of a stretch, but it feels like people nowadays who are so against femininity and against femmes, trans women, feminine men, even within the gay community, having some of these ideas being reinforced. And that's what this feels like to me. Now, it may feel different, it may be different, but reading through that and learning about this section of Marsha's history feels very much that way. Like, you're giving me a bad name. And the very idea to say that this is giving you a bad name feels like, yes, we're gay, we're in this alliance, but we're passing, in a sense. We are gay people who are cisgendered, who can not necessarily pass for being straight, but have a very, are the more quote-unquote acceptable gay. Like when someone says, like when you meet a more masculine male who's gay and a more feminine woman who's gay, and it's like, oh, they're acceptable, but a slightly more butch woman and a slightly effeminate man is then, even in this community, how do I put them? I'm trying not to talk over myself. That those persons are viewed by this heterosexual community and this larger population as something that's a slightly less or more wrong. This is stream of consciousness, y'all. I'm just getting my thoughts out. Now, their response was to march defiantly ahead of the parade. Like, there you fucking go. Like, oh, we're not a part of this. We're giving you a bad name. Okay, well, bitch, take this. Walk in my shadow. So, during the gay rights rally at New York City Hall in the early 1970s, they were photographed by Diane Davies. A reporter asked Johnson why the group was demonstrating. Johnson shouted into the microphone, "Darling, I want my gay rights now. It's my gay rights and I want it now." Pretty much. It's my money, I want it now. Now, during another incident around this time, Johnson was confronted by police officers for hustling in New York. Now, when the officers attempted to perform an arrest, Johnson hit them with a handbag which contained 2 bricks. Now, Marsha ain't nothing if not consistent. 2 fucking bricks? Like, what? Now, when asked by the judge for an explanation for hustling, which I'm going to assume is sex work, Johnson claimed to be trying to secure enough money for a tombstone for Johnson's husband. Now, during a time when same-sex marriage was illegal in the United States, the judge asked, "What happened to this alleged husband?" Johnson responded, "Pigs killed him." Initially sentenced to 90 days in prison for the assault, Johnson's lawyer eventually convinced the judge that the Bellevue would be more suitable. Now, the Bellevue, is a hospital, Bellevue Hospital, officially New York City Health and Hospitals. Bellevue, formerly known as Bellevue Hospital Center, is a hospital in New York and is the oldest public hospital in the United States, one of the largest hospitals in the United States by number of beds, and it's located at 462 First Avenue in the Kips Bay neighborhood of Manhattan. So those of you who are not familiar, there's a bit of history. So, oh man. So getting back to even gay marriage, like we're looking at kind of gays throughout history and having these historic moments and these important life events, but then not even adding on the romantic portion of it. There's gay marriage not being legal, like not having the opportunity like your cisgendered counterparts to have that union. And like, oh my God, like how, man, I just finished watching Hollywood on Netflix a little while ago, maybe a couple weeks ago at the time of this recording, and to see the anguish and drama surrounding even the gay lifestyle in that more optimistic, brightly, like that very much Glee type of show. Even to see it there, it's yeah, I don't know, but pigs killed them. We know that much. So he's sentenced to judge sent Marsha to Bellevue. Now with Rivera, Johnson established the Star House. The Star House is a shelter for gay and trans street kids. Now in 1972, that was when it was founded, and paid the rent for it with money that they made themselves as sex workers. So again, support sex workers. This is a podcast that supports sex workers. Sex work is real work. Sex work is work. While the White House was not focused on performance, Johnson was a drag mother of Star House. In the long-standing tradition of chosen family in the Black and Latino LGBTQ communities, Johnson worked to provide food, clothing, emotional support, and a sense of family for the young drag queens, trans women, gender nonconformists, and other gay street kids living on the Christopher Street docks or in their houses or on the Lower East Side of New York. There you go, houses. LaBeija, Revlon, the Extravaganza, like the houses that you see in Pose and that you see in Paris is Burning. Those are, well, Pose maybe not so much, but those are real houses. Those are real communities of queer people coming together to support each other. That found family thing is not something to be taken lightly. And to see all the shit, Marsha did a lot of fucking shit. Like a lot of shit. Like this is shit that should have been common knowledge or ingrained within me and so many other people by the time we hit freshman year of high, or even learning it in freshman year. If you just think that that's when you should, but shit, hell, we learned about American history all through our fucking school career. So I don't give a damn. This shit should be known. It should be widely known. It shouldn't be something that you have to seek out. Now, in 1980s, Johnson continued to play an active part in street activism as a respected organizer and marshal with ACT UP. In 1992, when George Segal's Stonewall Memorial was moved to Christopher Street from Ohio to recognize the gay liberation movement, Marsha commented, "How many people have died for these two little statues to be put on a park to recognize gay people? How many years does it take for people to see that we're all brothers and sisters and human beings in the human race? I mean, how many years does it take for people to see that we're all in this race together? This rat race together." Man. Oh, okay, so I don't know, y'all. By 1966, Johnson lived on the streets and engaged in survival sex in connection with sex work. Johnson claimed to have been arrested over 100 times and was also shot once back in the late 1970s. Johnson spoke of having a first of mental breakdowns back in 1970. According to Bob Kohler, Marsha would walk naked up Christopher Street and be taken away for 2 or 3 months to be treated with, and I don't know how to pronounce this, it looks like chlorpromazine. I believe that's it. CHLORPROMAZINE. Chlorpromazine. Yeah. And antipsychotic medication. Now, upon returning, the medication would wear off over the course of 1 month, and Johnson would return back to normal. Between 1980 and Johnson's death in 1992, Johnson lived with a friend, Randy Wicker. Now, Randy Wicker was an American author, activist, and blogger. After the involvement in the early homophile and gay liberation movements, Wicker became active around the issues of human cloning, which there's that. Now, Randy Wicker invited Johnson to stay the night one time when it was very cold out, they said about 10 degrees, -12 Celsius. Now, though generally regarded as a generous and warm-hearted and saintly under the Marsha persona, Johnson's angry, violent side could sometimes emerge when Johnson was depressed or under severe stress. Now, let's focus on that for a minute. So, out of all the things that Johnson has been through, that Marsha has been through, a lot of those same things people experience now and within the last few years, well, continuously experience, but specifically within the last decade. We have drugs, we have names for these things, we have treatment available, and a lot of time when it comes to healthcare and black people, black women, and let's not get started on black trans women, to get adequate care can be a fucking battle in itself. That's why there's nothing that, but there's very little that you can say about a trans person, especially from way back when it comes to survival, that would make me be like, oh, that person was a horrible person. Times were different then. And the amount of PTSD that we have, or what is it called? Yeah, PTSD that we have from different traumatic events, different environmental influences. It's a fucking battlefield. So if Marsha has a angry, violent side, that makes sense with all of the shit that she's been through from childhood. That makes sense to me. But if the same actions were to happen now, there may be a bit more access. But again, being a trans or gender non-conforming queer person, Now, some people felt that it was more common for this to happen under Johnson's male persona as Malcolm during those moments when Johnson's violent side emerged. Now, according to an acquaintance, Robert Hyde, Johnson could be aggressive and short-tempered and speak in a deeper voice, and as Malcolm will become a very nasty, vicious man looking for fights, which is, I don't know how I feel about that wording, but it's verbatim. This dual personality of Johnson's had been described as a schizophrenic personality at work. When this happened, Johnson would often get in fights and wind up hospitalized and sedated, and friends would have to organize and raise money to bail Johnson out of jail or to try to secure release from places like Bellevue. Now, in the 1979 Village Voice article, The Drag of Politics, this was by Stephen Watson, further elaborated upon by Stonewall's historian Carter, it had perhaps been for this reason that other activists had been reluctant at first to credit Johnson for helping to spark the gay liberation movement in the early 1970s. Now, that being said, it don't fucking matter. Like, that's the way I look at it. If someone has mental health issues, or someone is homeless, or someone is violent, the shit that they do that sparks reform, I don't give a damn about that shit. Like, how many artists have terrible Oh, this ain't the best example. Ooh, let me see. How many... If you're going to, let's say, for example, talk to someone and you're being really shitty to them and you're being very sarcastic. So they're asking you for help. Let's say they're asking you, can you tell me about, I don't know, the Civil War? And you're being very flippant, like, this person is dumb. They should know about the Civil War. And you're giving them the correct information and they're retaining that. Yes, you're a shitty fucking person, but they still walked away from this shitty interaction with that knowledge. Now, that's not to say that I am pro fucking over anyone, but what I'm saying is, regardless to how Marsha's mental state was, if Marsha threw that brick or had handled the shot glass, heard around the world, I don't give a fuck if Marsha was schizophrenic, depressed, angry all the time. It still happened and it still caused change. That's what I'm getting at. I hope I'm making that clear. If not, that's what I'm trying to say. Now, Watson also reported that Johnson's saintly persona was volatile and listed a roster of gay bars from which Johnson had been banned. At the time of Johnson's death back in 1992, Johnson was said to have been incredibly sick and in a fragile state. Now, shortly after the 1992 Pride Parade, Johnson's body was discovered floating in the Hudson River. Police initially ruled the death a suicide, but Marsha's friends and other members of the local community insisted that Johnson was not suicidal and noted that the back of Johnson's head had a massive wound. According to Sylvia Rivera, their friend Bob Kohler believed Johnson had committed suicide due to an ever-increasing fragile state, which Rivera herself disputed, claiming that she and Marsha had made a pact to cross the River Jordan together, the Hudson River. Now, those who were close to Marsha considered the death suspicious. Many claim that while Johnson did struggle mentally, this did not manifest itself as suicidal. Randy Wicker later said that Marsha may have hallucinated and walked into the river, or may have jumped into the river or escaped harassers, but stated that Johnson was never suicidal. Again, mental health. Dealing with it back then versus now, like, I'm sure strides have been made in the 90s and in the late 80s, but man, now every day you turn on the TV, you're going to see a commercial for something, for some drug to help deal with something. I don't know that mental health education and treatment was as readily available back then. If you guys have any firsthand knowledge or know, let me know. But there is a documentary on Netflix, and I forget the name. My apologies. I'll put it in the show notes. But there is about getting to the bottom of Marsha's murder, or Marsha's death, I'll say. And I started watching it some time ago, and I think I got like maybe halfway through. But it's a lot. It's a lot for me when consuming me. Like, okay, we have the protests going on, we have the COVID going on, and I remember back when 9/11 happened, and I would sit on my bed after school and just watch all of this footage. And it's not lost on me that a lot of what I was doing for 8, 9, 10 hours a day probably affected me in ways that I don't even know. So when it comes to a lot of the police violence and the protests and the COVID updates and just the state of the world that we're in now, I have to take a step back. And I remember watching the Marsha Netflix doc and even seeing other shows and movies and just being exhausted. Now my plan is to complete the whole project, to watch it all, because I think it's very important to. But when it deals with queer people and death and violence and harassment and mental health issues and being fucking violent and violated and having traumatic experience, it's a lot. It is a lot, and it takes a lot out of me. It's a lot. If you guys have seen the documentary or you know it, comment below and tweet me Carefree Blur. Like I said, I'm going to find a way, get my hands on the title and put it in the show notes, but even still, let me know. Now, several people came forward to say that they had seen Johnson harassed by a group of quote-unquote thugs who had also robbed people. According to Wicker, a witness saw a neighborhood resident fighting with Marsha on July 4th of 1992. Now, during the fight, he used a homophobic slur and later bragged to someone at a bar that he had killed a drag queen named Marsha. The witness was not successful in relaying this information to the police. Other locals stated that later that the law enforcement was not interested in investigating Johnson's death, stating that the case was about a gay black man and wanting little to do with that at that time. Now, there's an episode of Pose, and I can't remember the exact episode. It was season 2, and it was during the episode that Elektra was speaking to, was it after she killed that man? And after that man died and she put him in her closet. It was somewhere around that episode where they talked to a trans woman who was a sex worker who had relayed her story, which was that she was having sex with a white guy, and then they got into it about money, I think, and then he called the police and she was taken off to jail. And that's what this reminds me of. Like, you can just throw away these people. Like, not only, oh God, whatever. Marsha was cremated, and following a funeral at a local church, friends released Johnson's ashes over the river. Police allowed 7th Avenue to be closed while Marsha's ashes were being carried to the river, which is, it's the least you could do, damn it. Now, former New York politician Tom Duane, D-U-A-N-E, fought to reopen the case because usually, as he said, when there's a death by suicide, the person usually leaves a note. She didn't leave a note. Now, in November of 2012, activist Maria Lopez succeeded in getting the New York Police Department to reopen the case as a possible homicide. After the NYPD opened the case, the police reclassified Johnson's cause of death from suicide to undetermined. Now, in 2016, Victoria Cruz, the Anti-Violence Project, also tried to get Johnson's case reopened and succeeded in gaining access to previously unreleased documents and witness statements. Now, she sought out new interviews with witnesses, friends, and other activists and police who had worked the case or had been on the force at the time of Marsha's probable murder. Now, some of her work to find justice for Marsha was filmed by David France for the 2017 documentary, The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. Now, that may very well be the title of the doc, but I feel like I've seen 2 floating around, 2 or 3, and there was some things I saw on YouTube as well. I'll just try to link everything, at least the title for everything that I find, in the show notes, so that you guys, if you want to look them up or whatever, they'll be there. And if you guys know of any, let me know as well. Tweet me, CarefreeBlurred. Email me, carefreeblacknerd@gmail.com. Put it in the comments. Let me know your history with Marsha. If you've known anything, if you watched any of these documentaries, if you have a friend of a friend, a family member, or someone who knew somebody, just give me all. I want everything. I want it all. Now, there had been some tributes. The 2012 documentary, Pay It No Mind, The Life and Times of Marsha P. Johnson, heavily features segments from a 1992 interview with Marsha, which was filmed shortly before Marsha's death. Now, many friends from Greenwich Village are interviewed for that documentary. Now, because there are so many, I'm wondering, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Like I said, check the show notes, guys. Now, Johnson appears as a character in 2 fictional film dramas that are based on real events, including Stonewall, which is back in 2015, played by Otaja Abit, and Happy Birthday Marsha in 2016, played by Mia Tyler. Now, both movies are creative interpretations inspired by the Stonewall uprising. Now, that 2015 Stonewall, I think that's the one that I deliberately didn't watch, where it centered that white guy. I wonder. I think that is it. Now, the 2017 documentary, The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, follows trans woman Victoria Cruz of the Anti-Violence Project as she investigates Johnson's murder. I think this is the one, because I remember it was a woman of a certain age, a mature woman, interviewing a lot of people. So I think this is the one that's from Netflix, guys. I'll check it out. But again, check the show notes. Now it follows, of course, woman Victoria Cruz of the Anti-Violence Project as she investigates Johnson's murder. Like Pay It No Mind, it relies on archival footage and interviews. New York City artist Anoni, HNI, Anoni, produced multiple tributes to Johnson, including a Baroque pop band, Anthony and the Johnsons, named in Johnson's honor, and a 1995 play about Johnson, The Ascension of Marsha P. Johnson. Now, Anoni is an English-born singer, composer, and visual artist. She was formerly the lead singer of that band, Anthony and the Johnsons. American drag queen and TV personality RuPaul has called Johnson an inspiration, describing Johnson as the true drag mother. During an episode of his show RuPaul's Drag Race back in 2012, RuPaul told her contestants that Johnson paved the way for all of them. Back in 2018, the New York Times published a belated obituary for Johnson, which is, again, the least you could do. A large painting mural depicting Johnson and Sylvia Rivera went on display in Dallas, Texas, just last year, back in 2019, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. The painting, the two pioneers of the gay rights movement in front of a transgender flag, claims to be the world's largest mural honoring the trans community. And then, forgive me, Sylvia Rivera, I did not mention any of this, was a Latin American gay liberation and transgender rights activist, prominent as an activist and community worker back in New York, of course. She identified as a drag queen, participated in demonstrations with the Gay Liberation Front. I think it's very important to note that Sylvia Rivera was a Latin American gay person, not a black person. She was a Latin American person. Now, on May 30th, of 2019, it was announced that Johnson and Sylvia Rivera would be honored with monuments in Greenwich Village near the site of the Stonewall Club. Construction is rumored to be completed by 2021, but with all of the shit we got going on, I'm not sure if there's any updates. Well, I'll say I haven't looked for any updates, but with COVID and the protests and whatnot, I wonder if it's still being built. Okay. Now, these monuments of Johnson and Rivera would be the world's first to honor transgender activists. Whew. On May 31st, 2019, queer street artist Homo Riot and this Suriani, I think that's it, created a mural as a part of the World Pride Mural Project and Stonewall 50, World Pride New York City 2019. They dedicated the queer liberation, featuring multiple images of Marsha. The mural, located at 2nd Avenue and Houston Street in New York, was curated by photographer and filmmaker Daniel Dusty Albanese. In June of 2019, Johnson was one of the inaugural 50 American pioneers, trailblazers, and heroes inducted into the National LGBTQ Wall of Honor within the Stonewall National Monument. This is back in New York City at the Stonewall Inn. The SNM, Stonewall National Monument, is the first U.S. national monument dedicated to LGBTQ rights and history, and the wall's unveiling was timed to take place during the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. I remember so many different stories about that 50th anniversary, about World Pride, and about like New York and things going on at that time. The ones that stick out to me were negative, so I won't bring those up, but I remember a lot of stories coming out then. Now, on February 1st of 2020, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York announced that the East River Park in Brooklyn will be renamed in Johnson's honor. It will be the first New York State park named after an LGBTQ person. And that is what we have on Marsha P. Johnson. Guys, this is a lot. I'm still learning. I'm still figuring things out. Happy Pride. Let me know again if anything I said is incorrect. You have anything to add? You have a bit more details about anything? Let me know. Actually, if you want to go so far as to like leave me a voice note or something, I'll add it to another episode of Carefree Black Nerd Podcast, or I'll update it to be a part of this one, or I'll create a whole nother episode in itself. Email me at carefreeblacknerd@gmail.com if you want to do that. There's no time limit, but I say at least like before June is over. Give me that. Give me your information. Because though I'm going through and I'm learning myself, there are people who know more. There are people my age who know more, people older and younger. I'm not afraid of being taught anything. If I don't know, hell, I don't know. So if you know more, let me know. Yeah, happy Pride. So I feel good coming back to Carefree Black Nerd proper and starting with this as the issue that kicks it all off. The state of the world is very different from just a year ago, just from last December, hell. And I want everyone to stay encouraged. Use that hashtag CBNLGBTQ if you want to promote anything from a queer person, someone in the community. I'll definitely be checking the hashtag and reposting and supporting. Please sign these petitions. Just if you can exist online, Twitter specifically, and not know what the hell is going on. Black Lives Matter. Black Trans Lives Matter. Black Gay Lives Matter. Don't come out on the other side of this world event on the wrong side. I don't have a lot to say in this moment, but thank you all for listening. Thank you for being with me so far. I'm coming up on a 5th year of podcasting, which is like, I can't even believe it. Hell. If there's something else that you want me to discuss, tweet me, Carefree Blurred, email me, carefreeblacknerd@gmail.com. Just get in touch with me and then we'll kind of go from there, because I like to make this as interactive as possible. I'm just happy to be able to get out this much of the story, as much as I could find on my own. We're going to cut it here, but let me know in the comments if you knew about Marsha, if you didn't know, if you learned something today, if you're interested in learning more, if you know more. Tweet me, Carefree Blurred. Every other social media app is Carefree Black Nerd. Email me, voice notes, ideas, thoughts. If you just want to get some stuff off your chest, because we are in a very different time, I'm open to that as well. Email me if you want me to read it. I'll read it on the air. Rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Please leave those reviews. Give me that 5-star. Let me know what you like. Yeah, if you don't like something, shit, tell me that too. But yeah, we're going to end it here. So thank you guys. Happy Pride. Please stay encouraged. Stay safe. Protesters out there, you have all of my support. I love you all. And stay carefree. Stay nerdy. Stay aware. Stay safe. Until next time.
Hello, Danny dear. What do you think of this nasty little gay place? Cute, isn't it?
I am playing the character of Marsha P. Johnson. I was scared at first because it's a big character. People know so much about her. She was called the Saint of Christopher Street because of how generous she was to everybody else.
That is so true, my little darling. Come here, baby. I have so missed you.
In 1969, it must have been hard. She really was proud of who she was and held her head high.
Marsha Johnson. Marsha P. Johnson, if you please, darling.
What does P stand for?
Pay no mind. All right, it's a raid. Get in the line up against the walls.
If any of you Lily Law girls want to dance,
well, here I am. 10 cents a dance.
She was very supportive of the gay rights movement before it actually became a movement. She should be very happy now because of her standing up. Then this world's totally different.
We've got our civil rights!
It's because of her.